Here we are in our hotel in Netanya. And in Netanya is living Barry Shaw. And he has a lot to say about BDS, about everything. So be careful.
Right. Well, looking at me, you can tell that I'm not an Orthodox rabbi. Okay, I'm an Israeli Jew. So let me give you my aspect of the Bible, which might be interesting to your viewers, all right? I look on my Bible. The Bible is my GPS system. You know what the GPS system is. Why do I say Bible is a GPS system? Because for me, the Bible talks about three things. It talks about Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. It talks about Bnei Israel, or Am Yisrael, the children of Israel, the people of Israel. And it talks about the book. The book does several things. It's the laws which tell you how to behave and lead a moral life. It also is a geography lesson. It tells you where the Jews were 3,000 years ago, the locations, the names of the places, the periods they were there. And with excavation, you can travel around, and I'm sure you've done it here in Israel, and you can touch the stones that speak to you out of the Bible. That is the GPS system, 3,000 years old, and we haven't changed the battery once. Now, what troubles me is a number of Jews who have jettisoned this GPS system for what they call tikkun olam, but also a lot of Christians who have jettisoned the Bible in search of some false God. And we see examples of this all the time. Some of them do it through a sense of replacement theology, I guess, where they say, you know, they're replacing the Jewish people with the Christians as the chosen people. I had a conversation with a group of pro-Israel Methodists over here, and with my Israeli chutzpah, I said, they admitted that some of their hierarchies have adopted an anti-Semitism. Yes. They have, as Methodists, they have strayed from the founding principles of the Methodist Church, which was set up by the Wesley brothers, John and Charles Wesley. And the whole religion was founded on the return to Zion of the Jewish people, because the Messiah wouldn't come until this happened. So these people who, if you like, have said that God has changed his mind, my answer is, I don't believe in a God who changes his mind. No. And I'm going to come on to something critically and relevant to today. Because if you believe in a God who changes his mind once, he can change his mind again. And if you believe in a God who deserted his chosen people for the Christians, I'm sorry to say this, but it looks like that type of God has changed his mind again and is favoring Islam. How do I prove it? Look what's happening to the Christians across the Middle East. They're being slaughtered, yes, like the Jews were once, when this so-called God changed his mind. Look what's happening in Europe, where the Christians have deserted Christianity and become secular, and you're losing Europe. It's happening also in America. So I would suggest these Christians go back to a biblical prophecy which says, those that bless Israel shall be blessed, and those who curse Israel shall be cursed. Because if you want to see a prophecy coming true today, wherever you find governments who are deserting Israel, they are being inflicted by social, economical, military, terrorism, or whatever. It's happening in Europe, and it's happening now in America. So I would say to these people, go back to your founding roots, find your GPS system again, because you're lost. You're lost in a wood full of wolves and tigers and vipers and everything. So if you're a Christian leader who have participating in, for instance, this farce, this pantomime of Christ at the checkpoint in Bethlehem, go back to your founding roots, find your way back, bring your flock back to the elements. You want me to talk about this Christ at the checkpoint in Bethlehem, yes, where they accuse Israel of leading to the destruction of Christians and Christianity in Bethlehem? What nonsense. Again, it comes back to these people subscribing to BDS for idiots. Because when Israel controlled Bethlehem, the population was 80% middle-class Christians. Since we left and handed it over to the Palestinian Authority, the Christian population has gone down to less than 10%. Now, these Christians adopt the Palestinian lie that it's to do with this terrible security wall that was built. It was built to keep the terrorists out of Bethlehem, but not the Christian terrorists. There aren't any. The Muslim, the Islamists, the Hamas supporters. So let me tell you about this wall. If, because of this war, the Christian population has gone down, and the Christian leaders are blaming it on the wall, how is it that the Muslim population has gone up 60% through the same wall? Are we clever enough we can build a wall that filters out the Christians and allows in the Muslims? Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And quite frankly, the thing that I find appalling, and everybody should find appalling, is when you find Christian leaders supporting the Palestinian Mahmoud Abbas saying that Jesus was a Palestinian messenger. I want to put it this way. I'll give you two instances. As an Israeli Jew, I know what a Palestinian messenger is like coming out of Bethlehem. They come out either with machine guns or with explosive belts strapped around them. Jesus was none of those. And if you believe that Jesus was a Palestinian messenger, then what you have to say when Mahmoud Abbas puts out a message which is now being adopted by UNESCO, that there was no such thing as a Jewish temple in Jerusalem. It was always an Islamic mosque, holy site. Now, if you believe that Jesus is a Palestinian messenger, then you have to accept that. Because there was no Jewish temple. If there's no Jewish temple, then Jesus wasn't there, right? So throw away your New Testament, which comes back to my founding point. These people have lost their GPS. It's not me that's lost. My GPS has been perfect for 3,000 years, and it's going to keep going forever. It's these people who have got lost.
Yeah, because the apartheid, the wall, is not unique. We have in America a wall. I've counted 9 walls, including Egypt with Gaza.
Let me give you another anecdote. Where we're sitting here, I met a few years ago a lot of groups from abroad sent me journalists and politicians. And I met a journalist, he was from the BBC, from London. And he reports to Asia. And I insisted on meeting him at the Park Hotel. And I took him for a 14-minute car ride to the edge of Tulkarem, which is due east from here in Netanya, where we have a section of wall, because most of it is chain fence. This is a wall. And I gave him a perspective he'd never heard of before. I said, it's taken 40 minutes to ride from the seafront here to this wall, which is, by the way, where the European Union say it has to be the 67 line and that has to be Palestine. 14-minute car ride. I want all of your viewers, you have a car, right?
Yes.
When you go home, take your car out of your garage, drive 14 minutes, and that would be the distance between the cliff tops, the center of the whole of Israel, where 70% of the population live, to Palestine. And what's in between? The fields, the kibbutzim, Far Yona, where my grandchildren live, and I live here on Netanya on the cliff tops of Israel. So I give this BBC guy a completely different perspective of what this security. I said, you people, the BBC, call this an apartheid war.
Yeah.
As if we're keeping out the Palestinians. Let me give you another perspective. This is the first time in Jewish history that we Jews voluntarily put ourselves in our own ghetto. From this wall, there is nothing except a 14-minute car ride to the cliff tops over here with Kwayon, Moshavim, Kibbutzim, and Netanya. What's on the other side of the wall? The Palestine that you want to do? You want Palestine that you want to create? Tulkarem, hotbed of Islamic terror that killed people at Beit Lid, at the shopping mall, on Herzl Street, in the Park Hotel. And beyond that, 22 Arab states, most of them filthy rich in oil, who tell you how much they want to help the Palestinians. So let me say, they want to help them? Let them. But it's a perspective you've never seen before or heard before. That this, a war that's so offensive to the poor Palestinians, is keeping out a horde of Arabs and Islamists from killing us. And since that wall has been built, not one person has been slaughtered in Netanya.
Yes.
In other words, that wall saves lives. It's our eastern, if you want to call it that, defense line to keep the hordes of murderers and terrorists away. And we are legitimate in our rights to put it there. And even going round to Bethlehem, because we have had Palestinian murderers coming out of Bethlehem to kill people in Israel as well.
What is your opinion about the whole world? Sometimes the whole world is against Israel, so little country.
Yeah.
Why?
The whole world, the European Union, members of the United Nations, your national politicians who are have been trudging across a dry Arab desert for 50 years. And they can see something shimmering in the distance. It's called the two-state oasis. And they're getting thirstier and thirstier as the sun is beating down, and all things scorpions and all sorts of troubles and tribulations are attacking them and preventing them from going there. They have to come to their senses and realize that that is not an oasis, it's a mirage. You think it's an oasis. And I promise them they'll be trudging for another 50 years and they won't be any closer from reaching it. It's not because Israel didn't have any intention to stop them reaching it. You have a list of prime ministers, one after the other, from Shamir to Rabin, to Peres, to Ehud Barak, to Olmert, to Bibi, all saying, let's sit and let's decide a two-state solution, and all of them have been rejected by the Palestinians. They don't want a two-state solution.
We have United Nations. In the United Nations, in the beginning, they were all democratic states. Now we have a lot of non-democratic states. How do you make a chance as a democratic state to survive the United Nations?
Okay. Viewers should know that because the United Nations pass a resolution, it doesn't become law. It only becomes law if it goes up to the Security Council and there's any proof there, then it becomes law, a treaty. That's one thing. Second thing, you're quite right in that the United Nations has completely lost its way. Any country in the world can become a member of the United Nations, and the vast majority of them are third world countries, dictatorships, Islamic regimes, anti-democratic regimes, etc. So the liberal democratic states, the Western democratic countries, are in a minority to begin with. But having said that, I truly believe that the Western democracies have a duty, have an obligation to teach these other countries the values of being a democracy. And one of those is to be honest and truthful when it comes to resolutions that you speak about. Let me give you some harsh statistics. Last year, 2015, in the United Nations, there were 21 resolutions that condemned Israel and only Israel. And there were 4 resolutions that condemned rogue states, dictatorships all over the world with all the chaos that's going on. Give you one example. Out of the 21 resolutions, I'll give you one example. Israel, this year, this is this year now going on, not this year, was condemned in the United Nations for being the world's worst and only abuser of women's rights. Israel, the worst abuser of women's rights, and the vote was 164 nations voted for that resolution, and 4 voted against. Israel, America, Canada, Australia.
Not Netherlands?
Not Netherlands, not one European democracy. I think this is shameful.
Yes.
And if your viewers in Holland feel you have a moral, democratic government on this one issue, but this is repeated over and over again by your government, they abstain. They think abstaining is, well, we didn't vote for it and we didn't vote against it. That is not morally good enough for a democratic country to show these other tin pot regimes what democracy stands for. Your Dutch government must stand in the United Nations, and if a vote comes up that says that Israel is the worst abuser of women's rights in the world, they must stand up and say no. Because abstaining is like turning away when the Nazis were taking off the Dutch Jews to the camps. You didn't say yes, you didn't say no, you just turned your eyes away. That is immoral.
Again.
Now, can you imagine that, for instance, Israel could persuade all these tin pot regimes to vote on a resolution that say the Netherlands is the worst abuser for children in war zones, and it passes 164 to 3. And all these European countries would abstain. What would your government do? So put yourself in Israel's position. Israel is the only liberal democracy in the Middle East, and we not only ask for, we demand for these Western European countries to have the courage, if it takes courage to be honest, to live up to your own principles. Because if you don't do it in the United Nations, we see how it's affecting us with the idiotic proposals that go on to try and reach this phony peace agreement over here. If you're appealing to these rogue regimes, the Islamic republics and everything in the United Nations, you're appealing to the same evil enemies of Western democracies when you're demanding that Israel has to withdraw to lines that are going to be set between the Europeans and the Islamic regimes. This is nonsense. It should be real politics, and it should be standing up for the values you say that you stand for.
I see it makes you a little bit angry.
Absolutely.
Yes. And you have the right to be angry.
Yes.
What would you say to our government?
The Dutch government should also honor some of the agreements that it has signed up to. For instance, there is one, the Dutch government was part of the European Union, which signed up to and agreed the Oslo Accord, which was signed on the White House lawn between Israeli Prime Minister Rabin, Yasser Arafat, under the President Bill Clinton. And it was witnessed and guaranteed by the Europeans, right? The Oslo Accord says that the Judea and Samaria has to be divided up into areas A, B, and C. Area A is defined to be under the full authority of the Palestinian Authority, both civil and security-wise. Area B is under the civil authority of the Palestinian Authority, but also it has to have a joint security arrangement between Israel, the IDF, and the Palestinian Authority. But Area C is under the full authority of Israel, both civil and security, until a permanent peace agreement. Okay? So if that's the case, why is it that the Dutch government is illegally building roads in Area C. They can do what they like in Area A, but Area C is under full Israeli control. Why are they also contributing to the homes and the caravans and the equipment and transporting in Bedouin tribespeople into this Area C to try and create facts on the ground? If you want to see illegal settlements, just look at what the European unions are doing, including the Dutch government, the French government, the Italian government, in Area C, which is against the agreement that they signed onto and guaranteed to. Nothing should change in Area C until you have a permanent peace agreement, if one day comes. They're trying to overdo that by creating facts on the ground, anti-Israel facts on the ground. That is wrong.
So, in fact, the Netherlands is doing illegal things.
Yes, it is. And I would, anybody coming over should contact a group called Regavim or go to regavim.org, their website, and you can see photographs of what European governments are doing illegally in the territories. Now, part of my book is also to take the language.
Yes.
You're talking about this. You want to hear 3 lies in 4 words
Yes.
about the issue we're talking about? Try illegally occupied Palestinian land. It's not illegal, it's not occupied, and it's not Palestinian land. 3 lies in 4 words. On the legality side of things, nothing has changed in international law since the League of Nations resolution, the mandate of Palestine for the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine, allowing, listen for this, close Jewish settlement. That was law because it was the United Nations at the time, and that became law. I want to tell you something else. That resolution, the mandate for Palestine, is enshrined into the United Nations Charter when the United Nations were founded. I'd advise your viewers to go and look at Article 80, which says anything that was adopted into law then is adopted into law within the United Nations. What I'm telling you is a small part of the legitimacy of Israel to sovereignty on all the land over there in law. And nothing has happened since to countermand that. Nothing in the United Nations, nothing in the Geneva Convention has done anything which brings in something which is accepted in international law, which defies the Israelis' right to sovereignty in Judea and Samaria all the way up to the River Jordan.
Do you want to have in Holland very good lawyers?
I had a meeting this week with somebody I've been trying now for 3 years to set up an organization in Holland which I call Dutch Lawyers for Israel. Because a lot of the anti-Israel activism, I'm sure, can be challenged under Dutch law and Dutch resolution. In other words, a number of things that are going on in Holland, not just Holland, other places as well, could be considered illegal or could be prevented by lawyers, qualified lawyers, specialists in different fields, being aware of laws and regulations to prevent boycott resolutions and issues like this, or even activism on the streets, which display anti-Semitic nature, be challenged under hate speech. But you need, in my opinion, qualified lawyers to do this. I was quite instrumental in setting up about 3 years ago a similar group in England called UK Lawyers for Israel, which is a voluntary group of lawyers who decided that they wanted to use their legal skills to challenge a lot of the anti-Israel activism that was going on. And they found themselves also attacking a lot of the anti-Semitic things that were affecting the Jews in England as well. And they have been very successful because they apply law in a very dispassionate way. One of them says to me, I put aside the fact that I'm pro-Israel or pro-Palestinian, it doesn't matter. Things have to be done according to law. If you're a lawyer, justice and honesty and truth has to be important. And where these are being abused, then it should be challenged through law. So it's very important to have a legal group in Holland. And if there are any lawyers, I'd like to hear from them and put them in contact with the small group that's starting up now in order to help for justice. If your viewers, for instance, are confronted by a lot of this nonsense, but really don't know how to answer, I make myself available to so many people through the social media. So let me know what's being said, who's being said by, and I will provide you with the truth that you can put in your own language. And it's very important that each one of your viewer who's watching this actually play your part in looking for the truth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're a great man. I love you.